Someone once asked Ramana Maharshi, how should we treat others? And the wise sage simply responded, there are no others. If you want to talk about the golden rule, treat others how you would like to be treated, well, then I would probably say that this is the platinum rule, or this is the diamond rule. When you don't even see yourself as different from the person next to you or across from you. And that is so hard. That is so hard to see ourselves as being practically the same as everyone else. The idea sounds so foreign to us. And even if we do encounter it, we label it as something bad, especially here in the West. Definitely over the last century, not to get political, but with things like socialism and communism, I'm not in favor of one economic or political system over the other, but certainly the spiritual notion that we are all one is a little alien for a lot of us. Because for many of us, we have grown up in a society that prizes the individual, that focuses on the happiness and well-being of the individual over the collective, under some sort of a notion that if you take care of yourself, then you take care of humanity. And there is some truth to that. I'm not denying that there is some rationalness to what is being said there or communicated there. After all, enlightenment starts on the individual level. If you cannot light one candle, you cannot light the other candles. Right? There has to be a spark, there has to be some form of ignition to kind of get the chain going. Someone has to start the journey and make it somewhere, actually progress in order to inspire and instruct others, who then inspire and instruct others. Now, I use that term others very loosely because, of course, at the very start of this video, as we all learn, there are no others. There is simply one. And this idea of oneness, very much like the idea of being one, the same with others, is also something that takes some time for the mind to adjust and the mind to accept and the mind to ultimately surrender itself to. Because how we view the world through our senses, through our interactions with others, through our thoughts, through everything, we have compartmentalized everything. We not only see ourselves as separate from others, but we also see ourselves as separate from everything, right? This screen that you're looking at is separate. This video that you're watching or listening to is separate. This room that you're in is separate. This space or earth that you're in is separate. But it actually is not. This is something that takes a long time until we can finally quiet the mind and see that the single common denominator running through every single person and every single thing is God. And we are, in essence, a reflection of that, a part of that. We are not some distinct, independent thing that is separate. We are part of the whole. We are the whole. Just like if you look at the sun, you don't say, here are the individual rays of the sun. You just see the sun. Or the other common analogy, of course, is the ocean. You don't really see each of the individual little drops, although there are infinite drops. To view ourselves as separate from everything and everyone is to identify with the drop. the drop that can evaporate, the drop that is meaningless, that is not worth anything on its own. A drop is only useful when it is part of something greater, part of someone greater. And of course, I'm referring to God. I'm referring to the universe. I'm referring to the presence, the light, the energy. These are all things that are necessary for us to understand, for us to recognize. One thing that I like to do sometimes is to, whenever I'm listening to someone, just give them my full attention. No matter how busy I am, no matter how much I have on my list, and I'm like many of you, it can get pretty hectic sometimes. Just completely clean slate everything and just give that person your full attention. When you do that, there is no more that sense of me and them. There is no more the sense of I'm this person and this is my wife, or this is my parent, or this is my child. Instead, you become one and you're engrossed in that conversation, especially when you don't have any thoughts about it, when you just simply listen. That's why so often when you listen to someone deeply, even if you don't offer one word of advice, that can sometimes do more for that person than anything else you can ever say or do. It's because they feel like they're being heard. They feel like they're given the space to fully express themselves. And that is such a rare quality in this life. Because we're always, when we're listening to someone, we're always thinking about our response. We're always thinking about our own lives. And believe me, I'm definitely susceptible to that. I'm not immune by any means, but I always try to, at least when I can, to be aware of it and to adjust and to recognize that no, this person is speaking to me and I need to give them the space and the floor basically to express themselves. I'll have an opportunity to speak. And sometimes it might be challenging. There are some individuals that, I deal with where it's very hard to get a word in, but it's okay. It's okay. Everything that needs to be said will be said. Everything that needs to be expressed will be expressed. But that is one common practice or technique, if I'm to give you sort of one suggestion of how you can start identifying with others, how you can start tearing down that wall between you and them. Another common thing that I like to do is just sort of put myself in their shoes. Just sort of imagine for a moment, right? We're always great at imagining things. We're imagining how our future will be. We're imagining how our day will go. We're always creating stories in our minds. We watch so much TV, we read so many books that we can create stories at the whim. See if you can do that with another person. If you're in a place, for example, where there's a lot of people, maybe you're at the mall or maybe you're at a park, and you see all these people around you, see if you can just be a gentle and passive observer. Don't judge, don't critique, don't think, just watch them and just imagine what's going through their mind. Why are they behaving the way that they're doing? Imagine, if you can, even further, what kind of a life they have. What are they working towards? What's kind of their compass or North Star that is getting them to wake up every morning? When you start to do this, you start to see other perspectives. You start to see that maybe my path is not the only path, that there are, in fact, many paths, infinite paths, just as there are as many paths to God as there are as many people in this world. There is no one perfect way. And so it's always sad sometimes when we see, I'm not blaming religions here, but it's always sad when we see members of a certain faith or members who subscribe to a certain faith or a particular way of life saying it's this way or it's the highway. This is the only way. And unfortunately, I was one of those people. During my earlier religious years, I was so convinced that what I was doing was the way to God and there was no other way around it, no questions, no ifs, ands, or buts. But I realized What a rigid and incomplete way of looking at the world that was. What an insensitive way of looking at that world that was. It wasn't looking at others with compassion or with equality or with the sense that we're all in this together. We're all walking each other home, as Ram Dass said. It was more of, well, I'm going to protect my own self-interest, and I figured it out. And if others didn't, well, that's too bad for them. And that's just, looking back on that now as I'm sharing this with you, it's you feel bad for that person. You feel bad at, you know, having those thoughts. And of course, that person was me, or there it was a reflection of me at an earlier point on my journey. And I'm so glad that I've evolved. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I've achieved anything, but I'm so glad that at least I have that realization and I can look upon that person or that earlier version of myself with some pity, with some compassion, with some love, and say, you know what, you need a few more years to really polish up and, sort of get rid of those ideas and ideas because we're all in this journey together. I always say this. I always say that awakening is something that we all must experience on our own. But in the meantime, there are so many different forces and elements and people and situations that we're constantly interacting with. We can't ignore that. Even if you completely isolate yourself, if you buy a private island or if you completely go off grid, you are still emanating and casting out vibrations that are then being responded and reacted to by everything else around you. So you are never truly alone. You are never truly distant or separate from everything else around you. You are one because you are a part of the whole. You are the whole. You are not just a part. You are not just a drop. You are not just a ray of the sun. You are the totality. And so, as I'm sharing these things, I hope you start to realize that there's many ways that we can identify and build bridges towards the rest of humanity. And I say again, I always have to be careful with language because sometimes language can be limiting, but realizing that, you know what, there is no separation. There is no separation, in terms of where you're from, where you're born, your religion, your race, all of these things that we naturally identify with. But even just as human beings, there is no form of distinction or differentiation. We must embrace and accept all of these things. Not just embrace, not just tolerate, but also realizing that we are at the essence all one. There is no difference. We all have that potential to reach God. We all have that potential to be the best and most complete version of ourselves. And no one is restricted by that. Everyone has the potential. So when Ramana Maharshi says there are no others, that to me is the simplest and most beautiful explanation of how we should treat everything and everyone around us. And that extends beyond just humans, right? I'm not just talking about people. I'm talking about if you have pets or if you're, encountering animals or plants, they're all one with you too. When I'm watering the trees in my backyard, for example, I try to take a moment to just kind of gently caress the leaves because it is a living being. It is a reflection of God. And even if it's not a living being, it could be a brick wall. It could be, that also is something. It is something that is emanating an energy. As we learn in physics, all matter can be converted to energy. And the difference is obviously the speed of light, E equals mc squared. And if I'm to take that equation and put it into a spiritual thing, the speed of light is God. God is the one that can convert energy to matter and vice versa. And it's up to us to not be stuck just thinking that everything is matter, that this matter is different from that matter, and so on and so forth. But in actually connecting through God to realizing that we are all energy. We all emit a certain wavelength. We all emit a certain frequency. This is the only way the world will truly be healed. This is the only way that we will ever truly stop conflict. On a grand level, whether that's, the conflict that you're seeing in the world today in the form of wars and invasions and all the horrible atrocities that unfortunately are filling up the news these days, but he's also even on a individual level, all of the personal little conflicts that we have every day, whether that's with our loved ones or even with strangers. There's so much conflict. There's so much misunderstanding. There's so much lack of love because, again, we see ourselves as separate. We see ourselves as distinct. We see ourselves as we got to make it. And this other person is an obstacle or a distraction or a hindrance to me making it. It's never, I can make it, but this person can make it too. Or the rest of my brothers and sisters can make it too. So I leave you with that. I know it's not something that probably in the course of a 15-minute video will resonate probably right away, but I hope it's something that you start thinking more about and start maybe even practicing some of the things I suggested, seeing if you can identify yourself more with the people and the things around you and seeing what the ultimate connection is. And of course, that's God. Let me know what you guys think. As always, this is my favorite part of the video is asking for your thoughts and feedback and just getting a pulse on what really resonated, which parts of the video really spoke to you, or which parts of the video would you like to learn more about. This is a way for me to understand what content is most helpful, so I'm focusing on the things that you're most interested in. But share your thoughts. Maybe you might have something inspiring to share as well that others can benefit from, and as they're reading or listening, they can find some form of inspiration or insight as well. But without further ado, I really appreciate you for tuning in, for taking some time from your busy day. And with that, I look forward to seeing you next time.